Hello, Africa, and thanks for joining us for yet another edition of your favorite program, 90 Minutes in Africa, your news magazine program which handles Pan-African issues. My name is Bo Elvis. In today's edition of the program, 90 Minutes in Africa, we are going to be taking a look at three major issues affecting our continent. The first issue is going to be about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which recently went operational from the 1st of January this year. What is the impact of this African Continental Free Trade Agreement on the continent? We'll also be taking a look at illicit financial flows out of Africa and examining the impact of this on the continent, what to do to stop the plunder of Africa's resources. And we also want to take a look at why Africans are leaving their continent thinking that it is not easy to make it here in the continent. What is wrong with our continent that most of our youths want to go out to Europe, Asia, and other countries before they believe they can be able to make it. This is 90 Minutes in Africa. We have a special guest today who is going to be joining us live from Nairobi, Kenya. That is Daniel Wambunu. He is the president of the Global Pan-Africanism Network. And we have in the studio Lena Fabrice, the president, the chairman of the African People's Foundation. And we have senior Pan-African journalist and sports analyst Philemon Mbale. Thanks for joining us. I welcome our guest, Lena Fabrice.
Thank you, Mr. Bo Elvis, for inviting me, for making
Bo
me a
Elvis.
guest. Mr. Bo Elvis, for inviting me. I'm glad to give my own opinion about our continent, to represent the African youth, and to tell the youth that Africa is a great continent, and the patriotism of Africa begins with the patriotism of your village, of your country. And amidst the topics that we are going to discuss, we will make the analysis, we will make the points, and see that we make Africa a great continent again. I want to greet all the viewers of my Media Prime TV, especially viewers of 90 Minutes in Africa, Pan-African program. That is a wonderful initiative, and I really want to thank Mr. Bo Elvis for this initiative, and the technicians who have decided to put Africa before in their agenda of trying to improve our society. Thank you once more for inviting me.
Philemon Mbale, senior Pan-African journalist, also popularly known as Mr. Sports. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elvis, and a special thank you to my co-panelists there. I'm meeting him for the first time. Obviously, I heard a lot about him. Of course, good things. I must say that. But then, Elvis, I want to say that when I got some statistics that just about 16% of intra-African trade is happening on the continent, while, for example, with Europe, it's Europe and Asia and America, it's above 60% of trading. That is to say, we trade among ourselves just about 16%, whereas we trade with external continents more than 50%. I think there was really the dire need for such an agreement, which is coming at a point where we are thinking United States of Africa. And so I'm very pleased to be here today to give my own contribution to building that state, that United States of Africa. And believe me, I'm going to give in my best today, especially when it comes to the agreement as well as the African Nations Championship competition, which is ongoing in Cameroon. So it's a pleasure once again.
And joining us live from Nairobi, Kenya is Daniel Wambunu. He is the president of the Global Pan-Africanism Network. He also has a page on Facebook known as the United States of Africa to push an agenda for United Africa. Daniel Wambunu, thanks for joining us on my Media Prime today. Welcome to 90 Minutes in Africa.
Thank you very much, Brother Elvis, for inviting me to this very important Pan-African program, which focuses on African issues. And I'm very delighted to be in this program, and looking forward to discuss ways in which we can ensure that Africans, and especially the young people, benefit from the continental free trade area. And also, we're looking forward to a discussion which will empower Africans to stop the plunder of the African natural resources. looking forward to an engaging debate and discussion.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Just to tell our viewers too that Daniel Mwambono is also streaming the program live on his page, the Global Pan-Africa, the page the United States of Africa, managed by the Global Pan-Africanism Network, with close to 400,000 subscribers. So thank you, Daniel, for pushing the Pan-African agenda forward. We'll begin straight away with the news of the day. We have two stories that are making news headlines today. DR Congo President Felix Tshisekedi now has a free hand at the helm of the state after the resignation of a prime minister loyal to former President Joseph Kabila. Madagascar's Ahmad Ahmad has been temporarily reinstated as head of CAF by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. And according to the Court of Arbitration for Sport, known as CAS, the ruling is an interim ruling to freeze his 5-year ban by FIFA ahead of an appeal hearing on March the 2nd. They also promised a verdict on the CAF elections on March 12 in Rabat, Morocco. We have been monitoring other channels, African News, DW Africa. We've been monitoring African news channels, SABC. What have they been saying? It's time for our next slot, Africa Videos app. We'll be right back.
Davos, the ski resort town, would normally be buzzing with world business and political leaders, but not this time around because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so, President Ramaphosa gave a virtual address on behalf of South Africa and the rest of the African continent. He highlighted South Africa's efforts to fight the pandemic and to cushion the poor from the ongoing severe economic meltdown. He then slammed the rich countries for vaccine nationalism, saying such behavior is jeopardizing global efforts to defeat the pandemic.
The rich countries of the world went out and acquired large doses of vaccines from the developers and manufacturers of these vaccines. And some countries have even gone beyond and acquired up to 4 times what their population needs. And that was aimed at hoarding these vaccines. And now this is being done to the exclusion of countries, of other countries in the world that most need this. And it was a great, laudable effort by the World Health Organization to set up the COVAX facility, where it felt that we needed to agglomerate all our acquisition processes so that there can be equity in the distribution and in the access to vaccines. Now, rich countries in the world are holding on to these vaccines, and we are saying, release the excess vaccines that you've ordered and hoarded.
Thousands of Central Africans are seeking refuge in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Ndu, the far north of the DRC, 30,000 refugees from Bagazu live in precarious conditions after rebel attacks. I only fled with my children. I took my children and my little sisters, and I ran away. I got on the canoe and I came here. In the last few weeks since January the 3rd, the Coalition of Patriotic for Change attacked the town of Bangassou, and quite a few people also left Bangassou to make the crossing here behind us. The needs of the refugees have overwhelmed local officials and the UNHCR, offering badly needed support. They offer medical screening, among others, for children who have been brought here. Given the huge logistical constraints here, it is difficult to get humanitarian assistance into this area, but we're still aware that the needs of the refugees here are enormous. Previously, the population in Ndu was less than 1,500 people. The number of refugees here is now 10 times more than the population of Ndu. Bangassou in the CAR was attacked on January the 3rd by the rebel Coalition of Patriotic for Change, CPC. The group was attempting to overthrow President Faustin Archange Touadéra, who was re-elected in December 2020.
His remains were ushered into the military cemetery at Burma Camp. Time to bid the former Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces a final farewell. The casket was received at the presidential section of the military cemetery for interment. The grave was blessed ahead of the burial rites by the Bishop of Keta Akachi Diocese of the Catholic Church, Most Reverend Gabriel Kumoji.
Grant that our brother may sleep here in peace until we awaken him to glory. For you are the resurrection and the life.
And for the former president, it was a 21-gun salute amidst the flying past. The son of the late former president was supported by his sisters to receive his late father's medals. Dr. Zaneto Ajiman Rawlings, on behalf of the family, thanked the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, the state, the military, and all for their show of love and support.
Ajiman Rawlings, Abutri, and allied family, send our gratitude to the government of Ghana, specifically the president, heads of security services, and indeed everyone who made this possible today.
Voici une situation à la falaise des Tchans. Un camion s'est brûlé avec un bus de transport et ça a brûlé tous les passagers. Un bus de 70 places, c'est tout brûlé, il n'y a que quoi suffisant dans ce bus. Je suis comme ça, comme vous pouvez constater, à la falaise des Tchans. Et moi, j'ai garé mon bus en bas, j'ai garé mon bus long en bas. J'ai garé mon bus long en bas avant de monter. Voilà le camion de l'autre côté. Voilà le camion de l'autre côté, comme vous pouvez constater. Ici, là, c'est le bus de Méno. Ici, là, c'est le bus de Méno. Voilà, comme vous pouvez constater. Non, là, il y a ça.
Voici le motoboy ici. Voici le motoboy. Voilà le chauffeur qu'on voit, les scolaires. Regarde le monde du motoboy.
Welcome back. Those were top stories in Africa as reported by media houses. We want to thank African News. We want to thank South African Broadcasting Corporation as well as the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation for the collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, time for us to take a look at the latest what websites across the continent were reporting about during the week. It's time for our Africa Web Zap. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the studio. If you're just joining us, you're watching 90 Minutes in Africa, coming to you from my Media Prime. Ladies and gentlemen, Lena Fabrice, we had so many stories this week on the Africa Videos. We found stories about rich countries rushing to acquire vaccines. According to Cyril Ramaphosa, thousands flee Central African Republic to DR Congo. Jerry Rawlings laid to rest. Also the situation in Cameroon, an accident caused by the transportation of illegal fuel. We've heard about a new mosquito that causes malaria. The AU trying to command extra 400 million vaccines. And then Central African Republic rebels. Central African Republic beats back rebels, among other stories. You also watched it. So which story caught your attention during the week?
Yeah, the story that caught my attention is about the vaccines, which is a preoccupation of the pandemic that has shaken the world since 2020. And I believe that I want to salute the comment I saw concerning President John Pombe Magufuli of Tanzania, who cautions the vaccines and its distribution in Africa. You know, most of the time when these vaccines are conceived, it is in the pharmaceutical laboratories of the Indian countries, the American countries, the European countries, and they don't also consult the African medicinal experts or the African traditional medicine experts. We saw during the coronavirus period how so many African countries came up with efforts to fight this pandemic. Cameroon with Bishop Cleda, Madagascar. So you come to realize that when a global solution is coming from Africa, the World Health Organization and United Nations agencies in charge, I'm talking about the World Health Organization precisely, do not take the solution of Africa into consideration. But when it is coming from the West, we applaud, and then through the diplomacy of what I call diplomacy of hypocrisy, they try to make it to be what should be accepted by everyone. I think I want to salute the statements of the president of Tanzania. I much admire his manner of leadership, because he cautions his citizens. Meanwhile, he is not rejecting the vaccine, but cautions his citizens, which means we should first of all try to see how we could consume our own products and then find solution to our own problem. When you look at the pre-colonial African society, there are little problems that we solved ourselves, great problems that we solved ourselves, and we provided solutions to our food problems, to our health problems, to our political problems, to our social problems. But now, after colonization and this post-colonial era, we have multiple problems, like the one of the Central African Republic, where rebels are actually making living conditions difficult for the citizens of this country. What is the brain behind? You will find out that we don't have a market to fabricate, produce, and distribute weapons in Africa, but Africans are to a greater percentage the continent that have arms and have conflicts. You begin to ask yourself, how can we not be producing a dangerous weapon, but we are consuming it more than the people that are producing it? Then we come to realize that African youths and Africa continent need to try as much as possible to consolidate ourselves and understand that those who encourage, promulgate, and make sure that this illicit products, be it the arms, be it the drugs, come and stay in Africa, are the very diplomats who come to TV stations, who come to websites to tell us how they want Africa to grow, and so on and so forth. So I want us to take caution to that level, and to say that patriotism and the agenda of United States of Africa begins with love of your country, love of your village, because every part of Africa is Africa. And there is this tendency of people always looking at Africa with a very pessimistic view, and this is done by Africans ourselves, and this is as a result of what? The colonial education system. Now it takes the special grace of God to go through the colonial education system, stand by, observe the things, and recommend to others that those systems were actually aimed at assimilating, brainwashing us to think that our continent cannot provide solutions to its own problem, and our continent cannot live up to the standards of the modern world. But those are false doctrines.
Okay, Leonard Fabrice, I'll be getting back to you with that because you have a lot to say. But it's time for us to have a guest, a special guest who is online from Nairobi, Kenya. Daniel Mwavundu, the president of the Global Pan-Africanism Network. I'm sure you watched the flashback news of the week. You also watched the flashback web news of the week. And which news item during the week is in line with the agenda of the United States of Africa, which you lead?
Thank you very much, Brother Elvis. I've been following up the news, and I've seen there is a trend where the African Union and also the Western leaders are promoting the vaccine agenda, and they are doing it without even telling us whether the African CDC took any measures to try these vaccines and verify if they are indeed fit for humans, or if they are safe for Africans. Because just like Brother Fabrice said, when Madagascar discovered the herbal cure, the Western scientists were the first to raise eyebrows, and they didn't even order. They had to test it and verify it in their laboratories to verify whether the Madagascar cure indeed was going to work, or it worked at that time. So I believe that Africans need to be extremely cautious. A Tanzanian president is the only leader who appears to be awake, and he cautioned Tanzanians to beware of these foreign vaccines that are being pushed on Africans. And it's like there's no any other option. If I go back to what the director for Africa CDC said, he said Africa cannot wait to be vaccinated. But yet he himself has not even told Africans whether he has been vaccinated. We are yet to see the African presidents lead by example, so that they be the first ones in line to be vaccinated. And then from observations, if we see that this vaccine is working for them, then probably we can try it. But as a Pan-Africanist and founder of Global Pan-Africanism Network, and also the United States of Africa, which seeks to reunite all people of African descent, advocate for the rights and freedoms throughout the world, and working towards the realization of United States of Africa, I will be very pessimistic when it comes to foreign solutions that are being imposed, and it looks like African nations are being forced to get these vaccine loans so that they can be able to afford them, because at the moment African nations, many of them cannot afford these doses, the millions of doses that have been ordered by Africa CDC. In addition to the 270 million doses, the Africa CDC has also procured another 400 million vaccines. And they have done so without even verifying whether these vaccines are safe for Africans. So this is why I'm raising eyebrows, why they are so quick to embrace these vaccines that have just been have undergone the shortest time to be produced. So I'm also very optimistic with the launch of the Intercontinental Free Trade Area, and I believe as an African and also as a Pan-Africanist, we need to push the Continental Free Trade Area into reality, so that Africans can begin to see the benefits, and for young people to be able to benefit from Continental Free Trade Area. they need access to information. They also need education. And more importantly, young Africans need capital to be able to trade with each other. And this is what African governments need to work on to ensure that the young people have access to capital so that we can be able to seize this opportunity and break these colonial boundaries which have divided Africa for decades and decades. And I believe that this is the time for Africans to embrace the African solutions to African problems. There are so many African scientists and Africa, a continent of more than 1.3 billion people, we can't say to the world that we can't even manufacture our own vaccines. It shows probably the kind of education we received is not good for Africa if we cannot have scientists to come up with African vaccines to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. And when it was beginning, there was a lot of skepticism in Africa. They were saying millions of Africans are going to be lying dead in the street. But as it went on, they saw how resilient Africans are, and now they are pushing for a mandatory vaccine agenda in Africa. So we really need to be extremely cautious and make sure that any vaccine that comes into Africa is scientifically proven by African scientists and verified, so that we know indeed it's safe for Africans. And at the same time, we expect to see African leaders lead by example in this vaccine campaign, and also the director of Africa CDC, the African Union chairperson. These should be the first Africans to be vaccinated.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Brother Elvis.
Okay, Daniel Mwambuno, I'll be getting back to you. I find it difficult pronouncing your name. I'll get used to it with time. Philemon Bale, I'm sure that I don't know whether you want to react about the news item briefly before we talk about the latest in the domain of sport.
Well, very briefly, I think it's I must second the opinion of the previous panelists. You know, to come up with a vaccine is some sort of a solution to a problem. To a virus, we should say. It needs to be tested, and there are a lot of discrepancies between in terms of geography, in terms of socio-economic status, even in terms of physicality. When you look at Africans, they are extremely different from Europeans. They are extremely different from Americans in terms of their physical nature. And I'm saying that to take vaccines which have been tested on Western persons, and they try to impose it on an African or on the African continent, to me it's a little bit worrisome, because mark you, like I said, vaccines will thrive under particular temperatures. That's one thing people fail to understand. A vaccine that will thrive, perfectly in the temperate world might have some limitations, except otherwise being tested upon Africans who live in the equatorial region of the world.
But you remember that Africans refused the vaccine from being tested. You remember there was a backlash when they said Africans said they were not ready to accept such vaccines.
True, because when you look at the death rate, when you look at the propagation rate of the virus on the continent, we are not in a dire situation. I mean, we have countries whose numbers are escalating into the hundreds of thousands of deaths or infected cases. We are talking about the US, Spain, France, Germany. I mean, these are, the last time we talked about it, these are the people who should concentrate more on getting the vaccines. Like the others have said, it's not a do or die situation for Africa. We really do not, it's not a bad situation in Africa where we must get these vaccines. And I begin to wonder how the African Union goes ahead buying multiple doses of these vaccines, whereas it doesn't correlate with the death rates on the African continent. I think, but for South Africa, who seem to be on the backlash when it comes to the death rates, I think Africa is not hugely affected by the virus in terms of in terms of mortality, I should say. So I will join my voice to the rest to say that the vaccine is somehow being imposed upon Africans without being tested on Africans to see its validity, to see its strength, to see how long it can last in an African bloodstream or system as opposed to that of a European.
Thank you, Philemon. Subsequently, we are going to try to contact the African Union to get the rationale behind the decision to import 270 million vaccines and an extra 400 million vaccines. So, Philemon, we are in Cameroon, and Cameroon is hosting the African Nations Championships, and today there is a controversy at the level of the DRC. Cameroon is going to be playing against the DRC today in one of the quarterfinal fixtures, but there's a controversy about the DRC complaining about a possible complaining about the number of coronavirus patients they have. That basically it's as if something is being done to cripple the DRC team from coming up with a wonderful squad during the quarterfinal match. Can you give us an update on that before we dive straight to the core of the program?
That is if and only if the DR Congolese team has not already been psychologically damaged, because Elvis, like you said, it's a huge controversy, a competition that unfolded very smoothly up until this point. Now, the first information we had was 8 players of the DRC delegation, 8 members of the DRC delegation had been tested positive. That was last week, and this week 13 others have been tested positive. Now, the circumstances surrounding the dissemination of that information is what is raising eyebrows, like you said. We have some videos circulating on social media where we have a delegation member for the Congolese side, that's the video, I must say, complaining how normally when they do their routine COVID tests, the results should be out within the next 1 hour at most. But unfortunately, they did the test a couple of days back in the evening. They did not get their results up until the next day, which is just 24 hours to kick off. That was yesterday. And now, how did they get their results? They went for the pre-match press conference, which doubles as the tactical briefing, and then they were made to understand by the Cameroonian delegation that 13 of their players had tested positive, whereas the doctors who carried out this test had to file the results directly to the Congolese delegation. This is about their privacy. This is about their internal team management. That did not happen. They did not get those results from the doctors. They only found out during the press briefing that 13 of their members have been tested positive, and like it is said, they were not aware officially that 13 of their members have been tested positive. They only got that information while attending the press conference briefing.
So they are seeing that, based on what they're seeing that as maybe a way to cripple their team ahead of the quarterfinal match.
Yes, we already have. As we speak, I am in contact with one of the correspondents of Africa News, who is with the Congolese side in their hotel. And he's giving me, updates, minute by minute information update. And to the best of his knowledge, there seemed to be some trickery somewhere, as per the Congolese delegation. They are crying foul that to them, their results have been manipulated somehow. And even there's an official letter from Congo's Football Federation delegation that has written to CAF, making a complaint against what is happening in Cameroon.
And CAF has reacted by saying
CAF has reacted, yes, saying that there is a counter test that is being done.
Exactly.
And
this time around, investigations are going to continue.
And this time around with CAF medical experts alongside some Congolese medical experts. And the results were expected, later this afternoon. And I wonder how that's possible for the results to come out this afternoon, whereas the game comes up tonight at 8 p.m. There's a whole lot of psychological damage on the Congolese team, whether this information is true or not, whether the test results are positive or not. the Congolese team has had to suffer a lot of psychological
and I think the Cameroon government is still to react on that. But I'm sure they will react.
COCAN, the organizing committee of the competition, is still to react to that.
Yeah, and this is something we need to react.
Still to react to that.
Yeah.
CAF is reacting to that based on Congolese crying foul. So there's a whole lot of uncertainties. I mean, we heard that it was difficult for the game to be played. Now, the conditions are simple. For a team to play a game, they need at least 11 players.
I think now they have only about 8 players.
No. Verified information tells us that they still cannot tell because they are not sure of the test results. But from what we know is that all 3 Congolese goalkeepers are supposedly being positive to COVID-19, and if that's the case, they cannot play the game against Cameroon according to the laws. The rules of this competition, of the CHAN competition, I mean, I got a 25-page document right there in front of me. It says that for the game to play, you need at least 11 players plus 4 reserves. Among those 11 players, there must be a goalkeeper for the game to be played. And now we also have news that all 3 Congolese goalkeepers have been tested positive in the competition, which means
it becomes difficult.
It is pretty difficult. We just hope that the things get sorted out on time, or in time, I should say, and for the game to come up later tonight at 8 p.m. Cameroonian time.
And also, too, Philemon, no, I'm not cutting you short. Also, too, we are waiting for the response of the Cameroon government and medical experts. Probably the Minister of Health has to come in to react to this. But also, we hope to that in future, it's important for CAF to have their own team. I mean, our own team of doctors for such events. Because it's the first time that they're organizing sports event, this kind of competition during COVID-19. Yeah, so we are also waiting for the reaction of the medical experts who are in charge of doing this. It's just that for now we are unable to get their reactions, even though we would have brought them to the studio. Time for us now, ladies and gentlemen, to dive straight into the first topic of the program, which is implications of the African Free Trade Agreement on the African continent. As you know, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is already operational from the 1st of January this year, which is aimed at unlocking manufacturing, mitigating global supply chain risks, leveraging integration, and promoting intra-African trade. And with me in the studio is the president of the African People's Foundation, and this is good news for Africa. I think we are now getting towards the United States of Africa based on the decision to implement this African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which, although is yet to be ratified by all African countries.
Yeah, I think African head of states should understand that this is the century for a new Africa. We've gone past 50 years plus for some countries, 30 years plus for some countries, since we're supposed to have our sovereignty as independent countries in Africa and as an independent continent. But we realize that most of our economic policies are copy and paste. Most of our political policies are copy and paste. And we find it difficult to authentify the real African economic, social, and political policies that will foster integration of the African continent. When I learned about the decision to foster the African Free Trade Area, I was delighted. But then I asked a lot of questions, because when you look at economic or regional groups in Africa, like the ECOWAS, you'll begin to see some sort of progression in terms of regional integration. Because at the level of ECOWAS, it's easy with a West African passport to easily move from one country to the other and carry out activities, even though this is not very strong in French West African countries. This is very common with the English West African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Gambia, and Sierra Leone. The other countries are picking up: Burkina Faso, Mali, Senegal, Togo, they are picking up and coming up slowly. And you discover that is something that is wonderful. And at the level of our foundation, African People's Foundation, my goal is to let the African youth, irrespective of their country, to know that any entrepreneurial work which is of Africa and African, like designing African fabrics, like coming up with Africa way of rearing our normal animal husbandry, like coming up with the vegetative gardening that we used to do. Now, when we come up with these projects, we need to be interconnected, and we need to let the authorities of our countries understand that the boundaries that were designated by these colonial masters are supposed to be bridges for African citizens to interlink themselves in order to exploit the reach of our own continent. But then I begin to ask myself, like I said earlier, regional blocks like CEMAC in Central Africa, where it is very difficult to move from Equatorial Guinea to Cameroon. It is very difficult to move from Chad to Cameroon. It's very difficult to move from Gabon to Cameroon. But we are in the same regional block. Now, the difficulties come as a result of, first, stringent administrative bottleneck, which is as a result of poor political policies that do not encourage young entrepreneurs to grow and do not encourage the private sector to also grow. Because when you observe the economies of most Central African countries, Cameroon be example, Chad be example, it is a pro-public sector economy where people are trained to go to school and lean on the government for employment, for empowerment, and for livelihood, which is totally wrong. Because the government is supposed to just take care of a few number of citizens who are supposed to be people to coordinate the government in implementation of economic, political, and social policies. But on the contrary, they're designating and putting mechanisms of policy where all citizens will be trained to lean completely on the government. And this is what we are fighting. Because to liberate ourselves, we need to first of all have a strong hold of ourselves at the level of youth, and then let our authorities and the leaders in place understand our vision and put the necessary pressure required that they should implement this vision. In this light, I like the manner in which the president of Tanzania is managing the country. You know, Tanzania is a country I admire so much because the first president, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, put the country on the good footing, where his education policy of Ujuma, of socialism, had helped the country to emancipate in such a way that it is not copy and paste from Europeans. You get it? And then now, the democracy must be adapted to the context of each country. Because if what is happening in most African countries is that they are trying to be putting democracies of European countries, forgetting to know that their liberation process, their autonomy came after centuries. Our continent is still young, but we are moving faster even than the pace that these European countries move. We need to understand these things. And we need to learn from great leaders of Africa. We need to learn from the policies of Thomas Sankara. We don't need to be relying on foreign vaccines. We don't need to be relying on the Thailand rice all the time. We don't need to be relying on the
toothpick from China.
Yes, or toothpick from China. We don't need to be relying from the Turkish shoes or shirts. Each designer clothes that you buy in Africa from an African, you are empowering an African. And this is the vision of the African People's Foundation. Because to foster United States of Africa, we must first of all look at how to promote our own products. Because if we keep saying that United States of Africa, but 90% of products in Africa is imported,
it does not.
And then now these products that are imported are the output of the resources that they are taking out of the continent. Now, when you look at the balance sheet of balance of trade in Africa, you discover that the outflow of capital in terms of resources is very large compared to what comes in the inflow. And then this inflow comes in a very insultive manner. People will pass through NGOs to come and give few amounts of money to government agencies or to government or to individuals, and then they are expecting a lot of applause and glorification, whereas they are simply giving back to you what they have taken with another hand. Okay. These are the basics that we need to understand in order to foster the African agenda of unity.
Thank you so much, Leonard Fabrice, President of the African People's Foundation. Time for us to go now to Nairobi, Kenya. Are you still there with us? Are you there with us, Daniel Mwambono?
Yes, I'm online.
At the level of the Global Pan-Africanism Network, how did you welcome the news about the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is already operational, although not yet ratified by all countries?
I was extremely delighted by the news of operationalization of Continental Free Trade Area, and the moment the start of trading was launched, I felt a lot of optimism in the future of Africa, because for a very long time, Africa has been treated as a producer of raw materials that developed countries need to be able to power their own industries. But with the coming into effect the Continental Free Trade Area, it means that we Africans have an opportunity to rebuild our economies powered by more than 1.2 billion Africans, and which is the potential market that Continental Free Trade Area provides. And this Continental Free Trade Area expands the African common market into more than $2.5 trillion. And this is a very significant market that will enable Africans, or Africa as a continent, to be able to participate in the global economy as equal partners with developed countries. Because though Africa contributes a lot of natural resources, it produces a lot of these resources, it benefits very little from these resources, because we don't add value to what we produce. And with this Continental Free Trade Area, it provides a catalyst for industrialization and for Africans to be able to create whatever they need. And by this, it empowers Africans to embrace the Made in Africa products, because this is very important for us to love our own products, to support our own entrepreneurs. As a Global Pan-Africanism Network, we have been promoting this message of self-reliance. And though many African countries attained independence more than 50 years ago, none of them have economic independence. And now this Continental Free Trade Area provides an opportunity for Africa to attain its economic sovereignty. And for us to be able to do that, we have to fund our own development, develop the culture of supporting our own entrepreneurs, and at the same time completely discard this idea that it's foreign aid that is going to save Africa, because we have a vibrant young population, we have a lot of natural resources that can really propel Africa into a first world economy if we stop the plant of these resources, add value to them, and ensure that we embrace this Pan-Africanism spirit of that Continental Free Trade Area brings. And Africa trades less with each other. The trade within intra-Africa trade at the moment is only 16%. Compared to trade within the European Union, which is 68%, and trade within Asia, which is 60%. But with the coming of Continental, it provides an opportunity to expand the continental the inter-Africa trade by 52.3%, which will be very significant and very good for African development. Thank you, Brother Elvis.
Okay, Daniel, you're not going away yet. We are still together. I still have a question for you concerning the African Continental Free Trade Area at the level of the East African bloc. From my research, your bloc is facing at least 16% of tariffs when you want to export to Northern Africa. So how would this African Continental Free Trade Area impact the Eastern African bloc?
The African Continental Free Trade Area will expand the East African market, because we already have the market under the East African Community, but now we'll be able to export to the Southern Africa, SADC region, to the ECOWAS region, and this will create enormous opportunities for East African region, job opportunities, and at the same time an opportunity for East Africans to be able to invest in other parts of Africa. By doing that, then we pull up our resources, because I know each region in Africa has different capabilities. If we merge the capabilities from East African region and those from the ECOWAS region and SADC region, we are definitely going to produce amazing results. So this is why
the studio, we've seen from statistics that the African Continental Free Trade Area is going to boost GDP by 7%. That is approximately $450 billion by 2035. Your reaction to that?
Well, to be honest, it's a very good news. We always want change, and as people with mutual consent, as Pan-Africanists, as Africans d'abord, we would always welcome such moves, such integration moves. But I also want to say that Elvis, as good as it may sound and as optimistic as we may be, as feasible as the African Continental Free Trade Area could sound on paper, there are challenges. There would be challenges. In fact, there already exists some challenges even before the implementation of this agreement, and I would just want to cite a couple of them.
Okay.
And mark you, I'm in no way discouraging the agreement. I am for the agreement, but I'm just
identifying the challenges,
the realities, because I mean, come to think of it, you produce, for example, plantain chips in Cameroon, and you expect it to be in the supermarket in Tanzania, in South Africa, easily. One of the first difficulties that the trade area is going to face, and I always want to narrow it to the CEMAC region, is poor infrastructure. Now, to do business, transportation, I mean, for my goods to appear in the Republic of Congo, it has to be transported. For my goods to find itself in Tanzania or in South Africa, it has to be transported. And now when you look at the transport network in the CEMAC region, for example, it's still hugely underdeveloped, and that lack of ubiquity of transport, especially in the CEMAC region, is completely going to halt, to an extent, the free movement of trade on the African continent. The roads, I'm talking about road network, to leave from Cameroon to Central African Republic, for example. I mean, you cited it, Lemma, how difficult it is, talk less of Chad. And on top of the infrastructure, we are also talking of some socio-political as well as cultural discrepancies between some African countries. Let's go down south. South Africa, for example, is having serious issues with immigration, with immigrants coming in from the Zimbabwe's and other neighboring countries. So if we are saying that it's a free trade, it means we are definitely going to find a solution, or why not sideline those border securities, for example, so that trade and services and people can move easily. And now another one would be insecurity. That is a huge impediment to the implementation of a free African continental trade area. We know of the situation in Mali, we know of the situation in Burkina Faso, we know of the situation in Central African Republic. And now, how do we do trade freely when there are border insurgencies which try to destabilize the peace of an entire nation, and why not an entire sub-region? So these are some of the difficulties that I personally pointed out. I'm pointing out that as Africans, it is good, it is true that we need this consolidation of a free trade Africa, but then we have some internal as well as neighboring difficulties which must be tackled. Why not simultaneously? And who knows, maybe the free trade agreement could silence these border insecurities. Who knows? You know, because when people do not have jobs, when they're not employed, when they are living below the $1 daily expense, it becomes difficult for them to do trading. And then, like we know, it's easier for them to carry arms. It's easier for them to become, how do you call them, couper the roots, and for example. So I think the free trade agreement is a wonderful initiative for Africa. Believe me, I really want to see the 2035 this being implemented at a ginormous level. Why not? But then, like I said, we have these impediments, these stumbling blocks, insecurity, the political will, the sociocultural differences between Africans, as well as other difficulties which we have to face if we really intend to make Africa the United States of Africa.
Thank you so much, Philemon Mbala. If you're just joining us, you're watching 90 Minutes in Africa, coming to you from my media prime, only on the African Eye. We are receiving messages. You can keep your messages coming using the WhatsApp number you find on the screen. You can also send your messages through Facebook. We'll be able to read them. We've received a series of messages, but most of them are focusing on the Shan. They want to know if the match will still hold on. I've received about 5 messages talking about the Shan, and we have also received messages talking about people who want to know more about Daniel Mwanbunu. First of all, the message on Shan. Do you think the match will still hold?
I think everything would be sorted out for now, and I'm very convinced that the match will take place. That's my conviction. I may be wrong, I may be right, but I'm very sure that for a competition that has been, up and running smoothly up until this point, I think CAF, COCAN, the Cameroonian delegation will do everything possible to make sure that the game holds tonight at the Japoma Stadium. And then, Elvis, maybe I should just put this question to Lema, still concerning the free trade agreement. Now, what we are doing is we are leveling the playing field to do trade on the continent. I am supposing and I'm suspecting that foreign investors could easily take an advantage and come in and invest in Africa, knowing fully well that they can easily circulate their goods and services
across the continent,
while repatriating money back to their investing countries. I don't know if you see it in that light.
I will say something about that. I think the last time that the ECOWAS Economic Community came and thought of bringing in a new currency to consolidate their bloc. They talk of a currency ECO. That currency was fundamentally an issue of the ECOWAS economic bloc. But then the president of Ivory Coast, I don't know, by the policies that they have with France, with their kind of diplomacy, it became now an issue of the French government wanting the French West African countries to replace the French franc CFA of West Africa with ECO. Now, when we talk about foreign investors, we have to be very careful, because these people are not always coming to make us win. They are coming to dominate. Now, we need to be smart in giving or signing anything as far as this free trade area is concerned, because when we want to sign as an economic operator, as a government official, or as an economic bloc, we need to be consultative. We need to take into consideration the basic problems of the common African man first. If not, we are going to sign an agreement where it will still take us back to capital flight, where money will come in, investments will be done, but what will be the employment rate? Because the kind of employment that is existing in most foreign investments in Africa is underemployment. They actually employ the Africans, but they give them the salary that do not reflect the jobs or what the services they are offering, the monthly labor they are offering. You know, the African continent has always been seen as the continent of bulldozers.
Cheap labor.
Yeah, people who can easily give cheap labor. And for us to avoid this, we need to first of all consolidate ourselves. And this starts from presidents that are progressive. Akufo-Addo of Ghana, Magufuli, South Africa, some other countries, gradually as it is coming, because the first is that president should ratify, because if Cameroon do not ratify the free trade area, it might be happening, but it will not concern Cameroonians, because you are not legally backed by the laws put in place to travel from one country to another in the name of African Free Trade Area. So its implementation is still in process. And I think that as time unfolds, we are going to get the developments about it. But it's good, and I appreciate the fact that media is talking about it, because Africans need to know that something existing like that to push the agenda ahead.
Thank you so much, Lena Fabrice. Let's now join Mwambundu Daniel. We've received messages from people who want to know how to join the Global Pan-Africanism Network. Over to you, Daniel. There are people who want to join the Global Pan-Africanism Network. They don't know how they should do that.
Thank you very much. To join Global Pan-Africanism Network, you just visit our website, gpanreunification.org, or you can contact us via United States of Africa website, usafricagov.com.
So I want to know something from you, Daniel Mwambundu. I'm sure that you are facing a lot of difficulties running this organization. Are you having support from African leaders as far as this organization is concerned? I mean, the United States of Africa, USA.
Yes, indeed, I've faced numerous challenges, and I'm yet to get any support from the African leaders or from the African Union. But I've gotten a lot of support from Africans in Africa, and also the Africans in the Caribbean, in the Pacific, in Europe, and also in the United States. There is overwhelming support from the African Americans, and this is something that I appreciate. We also have support from the Melanesian Pacific, where we have West Papua, and a nation that is under Indonesian colonialism.
Thank you. Time for us to usher in our next topic of the day. Africa is very rich, yet too poor. What is the problem? Today we're going to be taking a look at how to stop the plunder of Africa's resources. And we are first of all going to begin by identifying the various ways through which African resources have been plundered. One of the major ways is through illicit financial flows. According to the UN Conference on Trade and Development, according to the Economic Development Report, billions of dollars is lost from the continent in illicit financial flows yearly. That is between $30 billion and $52 billion through trade misinvoicing, under-invoicing. And this is affecting budgets in Africa. According to the report, Africa spends 25% less on health, on the health sector, and 58% less in the educational sector. I think this is one of the major ways through which Africa has been plundered through illicit financial flows. But I know that as Pan-Africanist, Lena Fabrice, there are still so many ways through which Africa has been plundered. Can you kindly elaborate on that?
You know, the agenda has always been, because we are in a global, we are in a world where each continent is trying to be the dominant continent, and our own continent is having its sons, who the number of people who are coming up to represent Africa, to carry the agenda of a united Africa, and to see into it that will protect our resources are lesser than the number of people who are actually protecting it. This comes as a result of the fact that if you want to look at Africa, how many Pan-African presidents do we have? That is the question. Because from the president's policies put in place to manage his country comes the idea of stopping the looting of resources. Because from such policies, it will be easy or difficult for foreign investors, people who are coming to come and exploit natural resources, to come in or not to come in. Let me take this clear example. In the CEMAC zone, for example, or Cameroon in particular, you discover that exploitation of bauxite, gold, forestry, all these contracts are given to foreigners. Does it mean Africans are not capable of exploiting these resources and calling the foreigners to come? Okay, let's strike a deal. You have the machines, you have the technology, you have the expertise. I have the resources. I want these things to be done in my country. Bring your expertise here and then let's see how to share the benefits. That is it. But then when it is that we go and take foreigners to even come and construct, like when they are building stadiums in Cameroon, what do you find out? All the stadium, Olembe, Japoma, so on and so forth, 75% of the workers are imported experts. And then just 25% are the African local Cameroonians. And then you discover that even the salary or the job that they are giving them, it is the last category of job in that project. Why must it be like that? Of which we have schools training our own people who are technically apt. A young guy came up with a phone mark in Zimbabwe. Another one came with an app in Liberia. But we still have that mind of promoting only what comes from the West. And this mind is masterminded by the current leaders of Africa. Which means that we have to appeal first to the current leaders of Africa to think of Africa by 2035. To think of Agenda 2063 of Africa being the world continent where everybody will come there to rejoice. Because in as much as presidents that are working for the interests of the West are still in power, all what we are saying here is just dropping a grain of rice in the sea that it will be difficult to find and it will be difficult to gather. So we really need to appeal to our African leaders. They are the first people to carry this agenda. They are the first people to tell the Europeans that you come on the balanced economic agreement, not the one that our people will be subjected to be working for you. And I think that when we will start understanding that step, we will stop the looting of African resources. We are losing a lot. We have the forest, we have the aluminium, we have the manpower. Africa is having the highest rate of what we call working age group, people who are capable of offering services. But Africa is the highest country exporting its labor to Asia to go and be doing semi-skilled and unskilled jobs. Why don't we do this semi-skilled and unskilled job in Africa? And then because we are not only taking natural resources out of Africa, natural resources, human resources, and the best of Africans who are good in technology, in politics, in science, are working in Europe and even extracting again those few who could make the African continent great to Europe. So we need to change that mindset.
Phil Mumbale, according to that UN report, flows out of Africa, that is like capital flight, illicit financial flows out of Africa, is far more than what Africa receives from foreign direct investments. Your reaction to that?
Well, I always try to look at if there's a problem, I look at the genesis of that problem, the origin of the problem. If we have to find a solution, we must take a look back at the origin of the problem. Now, I think before colonization, Africa was Africa. I mean, there was life on the continent. even though not as advanced as the case would be today. But I want to think that colonialism alongside, I don't know, I think Christianity, those two, to me, I see it as a bite and blow syndrome where, you know, they came, colonial era, that was the beginning of the extraction of African resources abroad. So they came with all their colonialism, and then they bite and they blow with Christianity. That's my personal opinion. So I think that is the origin of African exploits being shipped off the continent. And if we have to dissociate from that phenomenon, we really need to go back and then try to cut off some of these colonial roots. And one aspect which he clearly made mention of is the president's leaders on the continent who still have colonial strings attached to them. Probably they were put there by former colonial masters or so, or they have some particular interest. So I think as good as colonialism was, it was the origin of so many problems on the continent. And if we have to fix the exploitation of African resources, both human, natural, and otherwise, it has to be by dissociating a lot of those strings which we had with colonialism. That is my personal opinion. That's how I look at it. And I think it's high time, and Africa is gearing up for that. Gradually, it could take a couple of decades more, but I think the awareness is there. The topic is on the media. Most television channels are talking about Africa by Africa for Africa. That is the only way we can succeed. We can stop the brain drain. We can stop the illicit exploitation of finances, of money, and the rest. And again, if you look at the statistics, according to the report, it says it made mention of two aspects: health and education. And these are two sectors which I must say are still under colonial influence to an extent. We still study what American history in our curriculum. We still study the housefly in our curriculum, which is not bad. But then it's high time we begin a pedagogic transformation or a reformation. Let's study Africa, African history, African cultures, African texture, African, I don't know.
Rather than spending time studying Napoleon Bonaparte.
I mean, it beats my imagination.
Which is not bad to know what's happening around the world.
Like I said, but proximity. You must know what is happening first.
In your own country.
In your own backyard.
Yeah, of course.
Before you can, you know. So, like I said, we need to cut off these colonial strings for us to be able to get that freedom, to be able to produce, to be able to consume, to be able to feel Africa by Africans.
Let's now join Daniel Mwambono. Daniel, are you still there? Daniel,
yes, I'm still there.
Daniel, we've been able to kill a lizard, but after killing the lizard, which is colonialism, we now find ourselves battling with a crocodile, and that is neo-colonialism. Now, faced with this issue of capital flight and illicit financial flows out of the continent, how can we succeed to solve this during this era of neo-colonialism?
With the problem that Africa is facing of illicit financial flows, it all boils to the leadership. We need a new leadership that responds to this problem. And Africa does not have the institutions that monitor these illicit financial flows. And because of lack of the institutional capacity, Africa has lost more than $1.4 trillion in the last 3 decades. And the only way that we can be able to stop the plan of Africa is for us to embrace a proactive approach, and which encourages Africans to take ownership in their natural resources, because most of these illicit financial flows in Africa's natural resources like minerals, gold, diamonds, and a lot of Africa's natural resources that we have, because it's foreign companies that own more than 80% of the natural resources that we have in Africa. And Africa needs a new approach with the continental free trade area, a new approach that encourages Africans to take ownership, and we should be ready to get in charge, so that instead of being laborers in our own exploitation, we begin to take ownership of our natural resources, nationalize minerals, and then instead of working for these foreign companies, we should be procuring experts that can exploit these natural resources, pay them as workers, so that we can get the maximum benefits from Africa's wealth. And I believe that if we embrace this approach of taking ownership of our natural resources and also building the institutional capacities to be able to detect these illicit financial flows, promoting accountability in governance, and also eradicating corruption, which is one of the causes of these illicit financial flows, because you'll find out that because a few elites are benefiting from these illicit financial flows, they continue to allow this plan of Africa to happen.
Thank you, Daniel. That ushers us to our next topic directly, which is it easier to make it in Africa or out of Africa? Because apart from the fact that the resources from the continent have been plundered through illicit financial flows, Africa is also facing a major problem through that is most of the human resources in the continent, they are being taken to work abroad. They have been taken to work abroad, or they are looking for greener pastures abroad. And sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we don't have the necessary manpower to be able to take Africa forward. Is it easier to make it in Africa or out of the continent? That is a question I ask you, Lena Fabrice.
Yeah, it's easy to make it in Africa, very easy. The difficulty that comes with making it in Africa will be, first of all, defining making what. Yeah, making what. We could easily realize our dreams of becoming world diplomats. Nana of Ghana did it. Sankara did it. We have great people in Africa. The thing now is make what and make it how. The new leadership after colonialism, because it's like we had the true patriots of Africa during the colonial era. Because when you look at colonial era, you look at the groups of the Julius Nyerere, you look at the groups of the Kwame Nkrumah, you look at the groups of the Jomo Kenyatta, you look at the groups of the Sekou Touré Ahmed, you look at those group of Houphouët-Boigny, Félix Houphouët-Boigny and Leopold Sédar Senghor, you begin to see a discrepancy between the leadership at that time and the present leadership we are having in Africa. Instead, as time is unfolding, we are having leaders who are working against the interests of the continent and the interests of the people of each African country. It's a paradox, because the pace that these leaders set, you don't see that strong unity. Because I remember when I read those decolonization process and the people who championed it, you discover that Africa was so united at that time, at the decolonization process. But all the presidents that have taken power in this new wave of multi-party politics in Africa, it has made it difficult for Africans to have true leadership and true representation of the Pan-African leaders. Because all presidents that have come to power after 1990 in Africa are either people who have been in one way or the other maneuvered by the Western powers and put in place, or the elections have been rigged, or the people have come by coup and decided to consolidate themselves. Now, the leadership is the main problem that is frustrating youth to run away from Africa. Because you have a lot of freedom in a different man's country and continent than your own personal country and continent. We can see this with Anglophone crisis in Cameroon. We can see this with the power tussle in in Central African Republic. We can see it with the insurgency in Mali. We can see it what is happening in Darfur region in Sudan. We can see it in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Now, when you look at all these crises that are in this different part of Africa, is as a result of leadership. Because these presidents are now working like puppets who take instructions from some people in some other continent and bring it in Africa and want to impose the agenda in the different contexts on different people, different geographical environment and geopolitical environment with different cultural background and different vision of the world. And it becomes extremely difficult for it to work. And I tell you, the African youth of this particular 21st century, if we put ourselves together in a network, that's why I love this agenda of Mwambunu who came up with network of Pan-Africanism. Because if we hold our hands in this network of struggling to revive those things that the earlier African presidents and the liberators of the true African continent, those people who work and fought for decolonization, if we revive that spirit, then we are going to tell the new African leaders that are coming that it's no more going to be how you want, it's going to be how we want. When you look at countries that are using franc CFA in Africa, for example, Mr. Bo Elvis, you find out that our currencies are not minted in our own country, they are minted abroad. How do you expect us to survive in our own country when we don't have control of the currency that determines standard of living?
We'll get back to you, Fabrice Lena. Philemon Bale, I'm sure you have people who are close to you. You have friends across Africa as a Pan-African journalist. And most of the time, when someone to say you've succeeded in Africa is when you travel abroad. And, you know, so when you take a look at this, what comes to mind? What do you think is really pushing our youths to flee the continent when we have all the necessary resources to succeed here?
Well, I will want to answer your question by another question. I mean, the question you asked Fabrice is, can we succeed more on the continent or out of the continent? Now, borrowing from everything he has said, and I'm answering that question now by saying it could be easier to succeed on the continent than abroad, based on what he has said.
Okay.
It could be based on what he has said. Now, based on what I think and I have to say, it is easier to succeed abroad than on the continent. I don't know if we understand.
No, I understand you, yeah.
if you get my point.
Yeah.
Everything Fabrice said, put in place, is easier to succeed here. And now, unfortunately, all he said is not being implemented on the continent. It's the reverse.
And that's why our youths are leaving the continent.
It's easier to succeed abroad, where there are better health facilities, where there's freedom of speech, where the
better internet connectivity,
where life expectancy is higher. You see, and unfortunately, like we are saying here, we need to get the playing ground level and suitable for Africans to be able to say, I made it in Africa, I made it on the continent. I mean, a couple of years from now, a lot of people could say that. I'm hoping for that. But as it stands, Elvis, I will go straight, because of time constraint, to tell you that it's easier to succeed right now abroad than on the African continent.
Let's take Daniel Mwambunu very rapidly. Daniel, you are following the discussion right here. I'm sure it's a very interesting topic that would have loved to really buttress on that for long. But Daniel, I want to know from you, as it stands now, what do you think is blocking Africans from succeeding on the continent and they prefer to travel abroad? Are you there, Daniel?
Hello.
Yeah, we're discussing.
What
do you think?
What is blocking Africans from succeeding in Africa? is the conditions that have not been set for Africans to thrive. In spite of the fact that we have a lot of natural resources and wealth, I believe that African governments need to do more to create the conditions that encourages Africans to thrive, and conditions which support African businesses, because we see that foreign investors get incentives that African businessmen and women do not get, and that makes them have a competitive edge over local industries in Africa. And we need to change that to ensure that we give more incentives to African businessmen and women to encourage growth and to spur industrial revolution that will create the opportunities that Africans need. At the same time, we need to encourage the African governments to build educational structures and review the African syllabus so that it produces people who will create jobs, rather than learning over 16 years of education and then ending up as a job seeker because the education system did not teach you to be a job creator. So there's need for us to review the African syllabus, and at the same time set the conditions that will allow Africans to reach their full potential.
Okay.
While in the West it's very easy to for Africans to succeed, it's because of the conditions that have been set for them to thrive.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for your participation in today's program, and we hope to have you in upcoming editions. It is true that we would have loved to go on and on with this last topic, which is very interesting, but I think we are going to reprogram this topic to have more time to talk about it, as we touched on at least 3 issues today. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation today, and we hope you are going to boost our program so that it should be watched across the entire continent.
Thank you, brother, for having me. It has been a great pleasure to participate in this program, and we are going to support this program so that more Africans can be able to watch around the globe, and look forward to another discussion. Thank you very much, Brother Elvis.
Thank you so much, Lena Fabrice, President of the Pan-African People's Foundation. I want to thank you for taking your time all the way from Yaoundé to participate in this program. I will encourage you to come again and again because your input was really welcomed. Philip Mumbale, I want to thank you so much. You have so many questions here related to sport. People saying impossible, Nepal, Cameroon, and all of that. I want to thank you so much for taking your time to be part of the show.
It's always a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is on that note that we draw the curtains for today's edition of the program 90 Minutes in Africa on My Media Prime, The African Eye. We thank you for watching and see you next week for another edition, God willing. Bye-bye.